Dear students, welcome to biology lecture. Our topic is bioenergetics. We have already discussed the other SLOs of bioenergetics in the previous lessons. Our today's lesson is light reactions. The major SLO is explain processes, that is light and dark reactions involved in photosynthesis. You already know that the process of photosynthesis is divided into two major phases: light reactions and dark reactions. Why they have been named light reactions and dark reactions? Because light reactions are light dependent reactions, that light is necessary for these reactions to take place. On the other hand, dark reactions are dark reactions. They have been named as dark reactions because they are light independent reactions and light is not necessary for these reactions to take place. Light energy is captured and used to make energy rich molecules, that is ATP and NADPH in case of light reactions. However, in dark reactions, carbon dioxide is reduced to make glucose, and energy from high energy molecules ATP and NADPH, which were formed in light reactions, they are utilized in dark reactions. Then the light reactions, they takes place in thylakoid membrane of chloroplast. However, dark reactions, they take place in stroma of the chloroplast. So here is the diagram of a chloroplast, and you better know that chloroplast is a double membrane bounded organelle which consists of two major parts. The fluid component is known as stroma and the disc-like structures are known as thylakoids. The thylakoid membrane is actually made up of chlorophyll. That's why light reactions takes place on the thylakoid and dark reactions take place in the stroma. You already have an idea about the structure of chloroplast, that there are disc-like structures which are known as, together they are known as granum, and one component of the granum, that is the disc-like structure, it is known as thylakoid, and the membrane of the thylakoid is made up of chlorophyll. That's why it's green in color. And light reactions, they need chlorophyll to take place. That's why light reactions, they occur in the thylakoid and the dark reactions, they occur in stroma. This is a general summary of the photosynthesis there. The light reactions, they need light, and the dark reactions, they don't need light. In the light reactions, the input is water and light, and chlorophyll is necessary, and oxygen is released as a byproduct, and energy rich substances, that is ATP and NADPH, they are synthesized in the light reactions and later they will be utilized in the dark reaction. So our today's lesson is concerned only with this part. You will be noticing that how light is used, where the chlorophyll molecules are utilized, how the water molecule is utilized, and where the oxygen molecule is released during the light reaction. You will be also noticing that the output of light reaction is energy rich molecules ATP and NADPH. We will be discussing these as well. So here we have divided the light reactions into major steps for your convenience. Otherwise, light reaction is a continuous process, but to understand it in a better way, I have divided the steps into 5 major steps. The first one is excitation of electrons. The first step in the light reaction is excitation of electrons, from where the electrons are excited. Then the second, we will discuss it with the help of the diagram. Then photolysis, which is the breakdown of water in presence of light. Photophosphorylation, the production of ATP during the light reactions using the energy of electrons which are transferred through the electron transport chain. Then absorption of light by photosystem 1 and excitation of its electrons. Then reduction of NADP into NADPH. We will come to this slide, but let's first discuss with this diagram. Here you can see this is a summary of light reactions. In this diagram, the mechanism have been explained in a flow chart, in the form of a flow chart, and this gives a Z shape. That's why it is also known as Z scheme. So we will discuss these steps with the help of this diagram. In this diagram you can see the chlorophyll molecules are present in the form of photosystems. So let me revise what is photosystem. We already have discussed in the previous lessons. Photosystem is actually cluster of photosynthetic pigments. Inside the thylakoid, the photosynthetic pigments are present in the form of clusters, which is known as photosystem. So what are the photosynthetic pigments? Photosynthetic pigments, you can think you can take the chlorophyll as the only photosynthetic pigment, but photosynthetic pigments, there are many photosynthetic pigments. Major photosynthetic pigments are chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B and carotenoids. So chlorophyll A is the major photosynthetic or the primary photosynthetic pigment, and chlorophyll B and chlorophyll B and carotenoids, they are acting as accessory pigments. Accessory pigments are actually helping the chlorophyll, the major primary photosynthetic pigment, in capturing the light energy. So the major photosynthetic pigment is chlorophyll A. So here what is the difference between photosystem 2 and photosystem 1? Photosystem 2, they have been named on the basis of their discovery. Photosystem 1 was discovered first and photosystem 2 was discovered later. That's why they are known as they have been named as photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. But the difference is that photosystem 2 has a chlorophyll molecule A, which has the ability to capture light energy in the wavelength of 680. The wavelength is 680 for photosystem 2. That's why it is known, that's why it is different from photosystem 1. And the photosystem 2, it has the capturing ability is 700 nanometers. So it is also known as photosystem 680, PS 680, and it is known as PS 700. But you don't have to go into that much detail, because in 9th grade you just have to understand the overall mechanism of light reactions. So here we go. First of all, here you can see the photons of light, they fall on the chlorophyll molecules of photosystem 1. So when light energy falls on the chlorophyll molecules, the electrons of chlorophyll get excited, and when the electrons get excited, their kinetic energy increases, and these electrons, 2 electrons at a time, 2 electrons leave the photosystem 2 and they move towards the electron transport chain. So when these 2 electrons leave photosystem 2, a hole is created or a gap is created. Gap or hole means there is deficiency of electrons and they need electrons to be fulfilled. So what happens? First step was excitation of electrons of photosystem 2. The chlorophyll molecule of photosystem 2, they absorb light, their energy level increases and the electrons are emitted. We already discussed that. So the next step is photolysis. Photolysis is the breakdown of water in presence of light. So what happens? When the electrons leave the photosystem 2, a hole is created, and at the same time, in presence of the light, water molecule splits. Water molecule splits and form 2 hydrogen ions and half oxygen molecule, because water has only 1 oxygen and oxygen cannot exist in atomic state. So for our convenience, for our satisfaction, we have mentioned it as a molecular state O2, and we have mentioned half because 2 cancels 2 and it becomes 1 oxygen atom. But oxygen cannot exist in atomic state, it exists in molecular state. That's why we mentioned that when one water molecule is broken down, half oxygen molecule is released and 2 hydrogen ions are formed. 2 hydrogen ions means they have lost their electrons. 1 hydrogen has 1 electron, 2 hydrogen means they have lost 2 electrons. These electrons fulfill the gap or the hole which was created in photosystem 2. Moving on, the next step. So the electrons which left the photosystem 2, they are accepted here by a compound, a protein, which is known as primary electron acceptor of photosystem 2. We are not going in that detail, remembering all the names of the proteins, but here you can say that there is a primary electron acceptor which accepts the electrons which are coming from photosystem 2, and these electrons move through series of proteins which pass electrons from one to another. They are like phytochromes, ferredoxin and other proteins. You just have to mention electron transport chain because it is a long chain of protein molecules which accept these electrons and pass to each other. So they are known as electron acceptors. So during this electron transport chain, it is also known as ETC, a major process occurs which is known as photophosphorylation, that is the production of ATP. So what happens actually when the electrons are passed from one protein to the next in the electron transport chain, at that time, using the energy of these electrons, ATP is synthesized. So the first output we get here, that ATP, the energy rich molecule which we discussed in the previous slide, that ATP is formed during light reaction. So this ATP is actually formed during electron transport chain. The mechanism is quite in detail. You don't need to go in that detail, but I will be mentioning that when these electrons are moving down the electron transport chain, of course the electron transport chain is also present in the thylakoid membrane. At that time, from the thylakoid lumen, hydrogen ions are transported out of the hydrogen ions are moved into the thylakoid lumen from the stroma. So when the hydrogen ions move into the thylakoid lumen, there is a concentration gradient, means concentration of hydrogen ions are greater in the lumen as compared to the stroma. Due to that hydrogen ions, an enzyme is activated which is known as ATP synthase. That ATP synthase actually pumps these electrons again out of the thylakoid into the stroma. So during that pumping of hydrogen ions, ATP is synthesized. So the mechanism of ATP synthesis is not required in your level. You just have to remember that the electrons which were passed from photosystem 2, they are received by a primary electron acceptor and they are moved through series of molecules which form a chain which is known as electron transport chain. This is enough at your level. So where these electrons are now going? These electrons now reach photosystem 1. So for our convenience, we are actually discussing it with step by step, that electrons are excited from photosystem 2, they move to the electron transport chain and then they are received at photosystem 1. But in reality, it is a natural process, and these steps, they occur in nanoseconds and they occur simultaneously. For example, here electrons are, photon falls on photosystem 2, the same photons or the light energy is it falls on the photosystem 1 as well, because they both are present on the same thylakoid in the same chloroplast. So when light energy falls on the photosystem 2, its electrons also get excited and they also leave. A hole is also created here, but how it is different from photosystem 2? The gap of photosystem 2 was filled by the electrons of water molecule. However, the gap of photosystem 1, they are filled by electrons which were passed from photosystem 2 through the electron transport chain. These electrons fill the gap created in the chlorophyll molecules of photosystem 1. So the electrons of photosystem 1, they also move to a short electron transport chain. It also only comprises of only one or two molecules. So they reach finally a molecule which is known as NADP. NADP, and they form NADPH. Let's see what is NADP. NAD, nicotine amide adenine dinucleotide. NAD actually stands for NAD plus is nicotine amide adenine dinucleotide. It is actually a coenzyme that takes electrons and hydrogen ions and reduces into NADH. You already have an idea about reduction, that gain of electron and gain of hydrogen ions is known as reduction. So NADH is reduced form of NAD, which is the coenzyme nicotine amide adenine dinucleotide. One form of this coenzyme also carries a phosphate group with it, so it is called NADP. And when this NADP is reduced, it is formed NADPH. So NADH and NADPH, they are the same things. They are energy rich molecules. They are acting as energy storage. So what is the difference between ATP and NADPH? Because these are the major products of light reactions. ATP and NADPH, they are actually known as energy rich molecules. But ATP, you already know that ATP is the energy currency of the cell. We already have discussed this topic in the class. Energy rich molecule means it has the ability to store energy and the energy is stored in the triphosphate bonds. We discussed in the class that ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. You already have an idea about the structure of ATP. Triphosphate means this ATP has one sugar, 5 carbon sugar. On carbon number 1 it has a adenine nucleotide, and on carbon number 5 it has 3 phosphate groups. The phosphate groups are connected to each other through covalent bonds, which are very unstable, highly unstable bonds, which can be easily broken down, and when they break down, they release energy, about 7.3 kilocalories energy. We have discussed this topic in the class. So ATP is the energy currency, and the cells use this ATP molecule for all the processes, like for active transport, for transfer of any other substance. ATP is the energy currency of both plants and animals. But what is this NADPH? NADPH is actually a form of a high energy molecule, which later we will discuss in cellular respiration, that this NADPH can be broken down and produce ATP. 1 NADPH is equal to 3 ATP molecule. So it is even larger unit of energy, and cells cannot use NADPH directly. In order to use NADPH as energy, the NADPH has to be first converted into ATP. ATP is the basic energy currency of the cell, and NADP is energy rich substance. You can see that I usually take this example, that ATP is, for example, if it is rupees, for example, being living in Pakistan, the currency is rupees, and rupees we can use directly, but NADPH is like dollars, and you can't use dollars directly. You have to convert the dollars, you have to change the dollars into rupees in order to use. Same is the case here. NADPH has to be converted into ATP in order to be used. So here we discussed that the ATP molecule is synthesized. Then the next step is absorption of light by photosystem 1 and excitation of its electron, and the last step was reduction of NADP and production of NADPH, which is also energy rich molecule. So how it is formed? NADP gains 2 electron molecules and hydrogen ion which was produced during the photolysis by the split of water molecules. So it gains 1 hydrogen and 2 electrons, because it also has positive charge and it has positive charge, so they both need these electrons to be neutralized, and they form NADPH, which is the reduction phase. Reduction means gain of hydrogen. So here is the summary of light reactions about the input and output. This is about the dark reaction as well, but we will be only discussing light reactions. So what were the input of light reactions? As the light reactions takes place in the thylakoid, the input is they need light energy is needed, they need water is separated in the process of photolysis, and then NADP plus and ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And what are the outputs of the light reactions? Oxygen was released during the photolysis when the water molecules was broken down, and then energy rich molecules ATP during electron transport chain, and NADPH during at the last step of light reactions, and that was the reduction phase. So this was all about light reactions, a brief summary through this diagram, that is light reactions, they need light is necessary, they take place in the thylakoid membrane, that means chlorophyll is necessary, and the input, that is water is utilized in the light reactions, and the output is oxygen is released during the light reaction, and energy rich molecules, that is ATP and NADPH are